We should always be concerned when it comes to Christian nationalism. This is why I'm a fucking atheist, and it's better that way. Now, following Pope Urban II, call to wage war on Muslims, now, members of the First Crusade took up arms and they departed Europe to conquer the Holy Land. This was like a religious war thing that went on for years. Now, before they arrived, though, the Crusaders found themselves pillaging the Jewish villages along their journey. Now, the most notable of these incidents was the Rhineland massacres of 1096. Now, this was the first time that people tried to exterminate Jews and pillage everything. And then this is way before Adolf Hitler came along. And this was considered the first large-scale act of anti-Semitic violence in medieval Europe. Jewish towns in central and western Germany were attacked and plundered. Now, some Jewish residents fled, while others, found by the Crusaders, underwent forced conversion or they were killed. Basically, they tried to force them into a different religion that they didn't want to follow. As we all know, the Rhineland massacres weren't the end of the Jewish persecution in Europe. The anti-Semitic attitudes that prompted them, especially calls for vengeance against the murders of Christ, continued well beyond the 11th century with its climax of the Holocaust. Although anti-Semitism is still very much alive in the Eastern Europe today. Now, the Disputation of Paris in 1240 involved Pope Gregory the ninth's effort to censor the Talmud, which is a collection of rabbi commentary on Judaism, but through the court of King Louis the Ninth of France. In a broader effort to convert the Jews to Christianity, nearly 10,000 handwritten Jewish holy texts were burned on the charge of blasphemy. Now, back in 1894, Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a French Jew, was arrested on the charge of spying for Prussia following France's loss in the Franco-Prussian War. Now, amidst the accusations about his loyalty to France, Dreyfus was exiled to an area called Devil's Island on an account of a colonel's testimony. When later evidence showed that the testimony was forged, the French army attempted to cover up their mistake. Dreyfus was retried and acquitted following pressure on the army after the information was leaked. Now, still, he was found guilty and only freed after a presidential pardon. The global jewelry was shocked that such blatant anti-Semitism could occur in a nation that proclaimed liberty, equality, and fraternity. Now, scholars view the Dreyfus affair as emblematic of the tension between Catholic and Republican forces in France. Church supporters, including the Vatican's official newspaper, viciously condemned Dreyfus and called for attacks against Jews for treason. Now, many people do share these historic episodes to showcase the marginalization of an oppression that Jews have experienced throughout their history. Now, I especially want to note that these acts were committed by governments that were often hand in hand with the church, or they were used by religious groups for nefarious reasons. Now, these events in Jewish history drove many Jewish people out of Europe, a significant number of whom found themselves in the U.S., like my family, because my family was Jewish. Now this includes Blake Ziegler's family, and his family was from Lithuania in the late 19th century. Now, today, 69% of American Jews identify as Ashken. Now, even with me being Jewish, I'm going to probably say this wrong. It's been so damn long. The American Jew, about 69% of American Jews identify as Ashkenazi, or the Sephardic Jews, and those are the Jews that descended from Eastern Europe and Spain, respectively. Now, although many of the Jews have left, a lot of Jewish people have left Europe, we carry our ancestors' experiences with us. The intergenerational trauma of witnessing systematic anti-Semitism, and it's often perpetuated by religious forces through the state. It has left an indelible mark on a lot of the American Jewish people. Now, unfortunately, even though Jews whose families came from places other than Europe also face this religiously fueled violence from other states. As a result of these experiences, American Jews have a unique attachment to the separation of church and state, and we're raised with the understanding that the lack of codified protection for religious liberty leaves us at risk. And we're wary of religious injections into politics, and that sentiment remains true today. Now, back in 2020, a survey by the Pew Research Center found that 63% of Americans that identify as Jews believe that the houses of worship should stay the fuck out of politics, which I agree with. In fact, the American Jews' attachment to a strict wall of separation between church and state is often an explanation for our voting patterns. Now, scholar Kenneth D. Wold has argued that the Democratic Party's historic emphasis on religious liberty and the separation of church and state is one of the primary contributors to Jewish support for the party. Now, evidence is very clear that us Jewish people take the separation of church and state very seriously. Now, for this reason alone, I raise a concern about the deterioration of the wall between church and state of our country today. Now, with the rise of the religious right since the 1980s, and it has led to candidates who fuel political division, and they promote disinformation and undermine our democracy through religious rhetoric. Just last year, the Supreme Court turned its back on decades-old precedent to reintroduce prayer in public schools, which I believe that praying should be kept out of school. And as we have talked about before, the court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade was also employed by religious means. Ignoring the fact that some religions allow abortion in some circumstances, including Judaism. Now, the Dobbs decision imposed the religious views of some on all Americans, eroding the separation of church and state even further. Now, my worries are not going to end here. Some members of this movement label themselves Christian nationalists, seeking to explicitly embed a Christian identity in our democratic institutions, which they can stay the fuck out of. Now, beyond breaking down the separation of church and state, we can see anti-Semitism and other anti-democratic efforts in these groups. And for instances, alongside the inbred Trump flags and crosses at the January 6th Klan insurrection, we also saw anti-Semitic messaging. Now, researchers at the Washington Post found a strong link between identification as a Christian nationalist with anti-Semitic views and a conspiracy theorist QAnon believer. Now, ideologies like these can lend themselves to actual violence, which we've already seen before. Now, for instance, the shooter from the 2019 Poway synagogue shooting had basically espoused Christian beliefs as the basis for his actions. Now, let me be fucking clear. My criticism is not against Christianity or any other fucking faith, but religion is a beautiful experience as one seeks a spiritual connection. Just don't bring it to me. Now, my critique is against the minority who misuse religion for ulterior motives. Part of the reason why Blake Ziegler went to Notre Dame was for interreligious dialogue, in which he was grateful for all the friendships that he's made. There was a reason for concern about the politicization of religion and the threats that we face in our country today. Now, I fear that history is going to repeat itself, which it kind of already is. Now, for the sake of our religions and our democracy, we have an obligation to stand against this fucking hatred. So, if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. Go ahead, leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a video or a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.